Welcome back to Dubsy Bricks for another episode of building the Onyx Cinder in Lego, and it's haul time. Had an order come in from lego.com, and this is for both the Onyx Cinder and Gotham. So we got some window frames here and some dark red 1x1 bricks, and they're going to be used on a second train carriage in Wayne Terminus. These L-shaped Technic beams are for the Onyx Cinder to keep the two levels together, and the brackets here are for the engines. And also we've got a selection of cogs in here as well to help us with the mechanisms within the Onyx Cinder. A couple of base plates as well there for Gotham City. Without further ado, let's get this all unpacked and sorted. Let's make a start on the Onyx Cinder. And the first thing we're going to be concentrating on in this update are the gears here, which rotate the wings and engines on the back, and the axle that's going to go through to the front should we put the front engines on, depending on what version of the Onyx Cinder we build. Now, I want to make it so these are totally enclosed within the actual chassis itself. Somebody did mention last time out about using a worm gear, and I've got this just here. However, unfortunately it's not going to work, as you have to rotate this so many times just to get this to rotate the equivalent amount of times, for example, if that makes sense. So I could rotate 180 degrees, and this hasn't rotated 180 degrees. And I want something that's a direct ratio on there. So by doing this, when I move that axle like that, the other one does the same. And we're making some good progress with the mechanics of the Onyx Cinder here. With the Technic bricks, we wanted to have them so they were pointed in opposite directions. And as I showed in a previous update, by having one brick and one plate between the two, you can then use a lift arm, which has got the 4 holes in it, to clip it all together. You can press it nicely. Instead of having bricks in there, I put Technic bricks in there, and that's enabled me to put the cogs inside the center structure of the build. So that's working out absolutely perfectly. I will build this up and then plate over the top of it, and then that's where we will be having the actual interior of the vessel. Now this axle here, that will continue all the way through the center of the ship to the front of the craft. Then if I do decide to do the original version of the Onyx Cinder with the front engines that rotate, it will all be connected and they will rotate at the same time as the back ones. If I go for the Onyx Cinder, as you see at the end of episode 6, when it sheds its skin, then we just won't connect anything to that axle. But we got this lever at the back, and you just turn it and that will rotate the wings the 90 degrees that it needs to do so. Now I have placed a large order on Bricklink for a whole load of these 6x8 Technic bricks, the 16x1 Technic bricks, as well as a whole load of other bits and pieces for both this and my Tantive build. And I am waiting for that delivery to come in. So what I'm going to do now is build onto the side here the engine mounts, which we did previously, which are these sections just here. And I've calculated it that this build can be up to 60 studs in width, which is gigantic, and the length of it will be around about 165 studs. Now that's if I do it at the scale of the engine that I built last time out, which was this one just here. So that's by calculating this section there. So yeah, it's going to be an absolute beast of a ship. But yeah, whether or not we actually go for that full size, I'm not sure. It does seem excessively big for this sort of craft, so I may just scale it down a fraction. But yeah, we'll worry about that further down the line. It's not going to affect any of this section that we're working on just here, or what I'm doing at the moment. Anyway, without further ado, let's start building these parts here into the actual frame. And here we have the engine and wing mounts all attached to the fuselage, and I'm really happy with the connection points on here. It seems nice and strong, and there will be additional parts on there to help keep this all in place. I put the minifigure here just so you can get an idea of scale, and just the first minifigure I came to. The vessel width is one thing I need to work out. I need to work out the whole size of this. How big am I going to go? I don't think I'm going to be doing it to minifig scale. I don't know what minifig scale is actually going to work out at, because it's very hard with no blueprints. So I'm just going on limited images that I have. But if we look at the playset version, from here to here is 12 studs wide, which in effect is what this part from here to here is going to be. Now, at the moment, this I think is 32 studs wide, so almost 3 times the width of the playset. However, lengthwise, my ship is going to be a lot bigger than 3 times the length of that. Now, I know this isn't to scale, it's proportionally miles out in several areas, so I'm not going to take we're going to take this with a pinch of salt, basically. But what I do need to do is work out exactly how big I want to make it. I haven't got any blueprints, as I've mentioned in the past, so I'm not sure exactly how big it should be. Due to the shape and size of minifigures, it's really hard to get something looking perfectly scale-wise with a minifigure, because they are obviously quite odd in proportions. So what I need to do is just remeasure the engines, how big I want them to be, and then I can work out the rest of the dimensions from there. At the moment, I have been working out the dimensions on the prototype I did last week, the one where I had the shell on it, but I think I might just shrink that by a couple of studs and then calculate everything off of that, as I do think it would be better to have it just a little bit smaller for the build. And that's the centre of the vessel all extended, and we're now up to 50 studs in width. Now, with the side parts here, in an update or two ago, I did mention that I might need to extend this part here to give it the extra strength. If I do that, I know that I've got plenty of room to play with, so I think that's one of the next things I will be concentrating on. But what I want to do first of all is just put some Technic beams out lengthwise, just so I can see how long it's all going to be. I need to wait for the order to come in from Bricklink before I can actually build the full fuselage on there. But once I've got those parts in, we should be able to get that all sorted. So let's just map out the length of it and see how it looks. And here we have a size comparison of the vessel at the moment. It's around about 3 times the width and 3 times the length of the ship. However, I do need to just triple check once again the measurements of everything. 3 times the length, 3 times width, that does look around about right at the moment. I have done so many measurements off of just images that it does look round about right. I've also measured the length of the engines, how I feel I'm going to be making them, and that's how I've calculated a lot of this. However, if I measure 3 times the width of these engines comparable to that, it doesn't work out. So yeah, not sure if the engines are too small on the playset version. But yeah, these are things I just need to get my head around. The other thing as well is the width of this part here is from here to over there. If I do this, so it's the version you see at the end of episode 6 where you haven't got the front engines on there and it's all peeled back, these beams are going to be way too wide. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm just going to tuck them to the inside so it's level with that beam just there and there, build the center structure all the way down. Then if I do go for this version, I can just add bricks onto the outside to get it to the correct size. So yeah, lots of things I still need to work out in regards to the whole structure of the build. And here we have our second largest Lego purchase of all time. And in this box here, we have just under 12,500 pieces for the Tantive and for the Onyx Cinder. And it weighs around about 14.5 kilos. This has come from Bricklink store in Germany and was here in record time. Can't wait to get all of these parts out and start building more of the Tantive and also the Onyx Cinder. A whole bag of 1x14 Technic bricks, 4x6 Technic bricks. I think there's 7,200 of the black Technic pins. Axles, 5 long, some of the half Technic and half pins, some 4 long axles. Six by 8 Technic bricks and some more 6x8 Technic bricks. A whole load of brackets or hinge pieces, sorry, for doing the engines. Some 7 long axles and some 3 long axles. Yet more 6x8 Technic bricks, 14 long Technic bricks in light blue spray, some 10 long black Technic bricks. More of the hinge bricks. These are the ones I used on the corridor section or the docking bay. One by 6 Technic bricks. The half Technic pin and half axle pins. 2 long Technic pins. 2 long Technic axle, sorry. 3 long lift arms. 1x4 dark bluish grey plates, the 9 long lift arms in white, a whole load of the Technic pins that are 3 studs long, a dozen of the Speed Champion BMW wheels for future car mocks in Gotham City. These are more of the 4x8 Technic bricks. Some 12x1 Technic bricks. The opposite part of the hinge piece in black and in red, and I think it works out I've got 900 in total pairs of these. Some 2x4 lift arms. Another bag of 14 long Technic bricks. The plates, which have also got a Technic brick in as part of it, I thought they come in quite handy. Some 7 long lift arms. Some 1x8 Technic bricks in light bluish grey. And some 5 long of the lift arms. And I think that's it. And I put it into nice tidy piles just so I can check that all the order was there, and glad I did, as we were over 70 of the 1x14 bricks short. And there were a couple of other bits missing as well. A lot of the other ones, there was too many of them. So for example, these here, I think we were two over of these. Contacted the seller and they were really good. Then they're getting them out to me straight away. But yeah, put the Technic pins into bags of 100. What a tedious job that was. But yeah, it's nice to have it a little bit more organised. But anyway, now we can crack on with a lot more work on the Onyx Cinder and the Tantive IV. And this is a very unusual site. Dubsy Bricks is actually organised. Look how tidy all these parts are. This is something I'm not used to. So I'm really looking forward to the next stage of building the Onyx Cinder here. So I'm just going to concentrate now on getting the full chassis length all in place, as well as connecting the cog up at the back here all the way to the front, where the front engines and wing mounts are going to be. here is the center structure part of the vessel, and it is a very big beast of a build, using so many pieces, so many Technic pins, and I'm hoping it's got all the strength that it's going to need. Now, you would have seen in the time lapse there that I had to make a couple of amendments as I went along. I did have it so it was a beam, 6x8 beam, 6x8 beam, 6x8 beam, 6x8 beam. However, that made it an odd stud amount, so I didn't want that, and also there was no room for the axle to go through the center to the front engines. Now, the next thing I did was I rearranged this part just here, and again, I'm just wondering whether I've got this right or not, as at the moment, from looking at it, I've only got one axle point here for the front engine. So again, I just need to make sure that that is the right position for them. If not, I'm just going to need to move that. So I want to make sure I've got that part correct now before I go that much further. So I think I'll actually do that first, and then I'm going to attach it to the rear of the ship. And the fun and games have begun, and it is getting very, very fiddly, and it's all to do with the gears and the axles, which are going to be joining the rear of the vessel up to the front engines. And the problem I'm having is the gap here is only 8 studs in length, and I'm wanting to put longer axles through here. Now, the axles are being joined together using this piece just here, and it's very fiddly getting them in there. But the other problem as well is, due to the fact that this gap's only 8, it means I can only use an 8 axle if I want to drop it in and feed it through, and it would be nice to use longer axles. So what I'm having to do is actually feed the axle through from one end all the way down. So this is something I think I'd really struggle with in the instructions. So when it comes to doing the instructions, I do need to make sure that I'm building this in a different way to how I'm actually physically building it at the moment. So now we've actually fed that through, I can now connect that onto that one just there. So that's all good. And here we have the fuselage, and I have just added another 28 studs in length to it, and you can see the size difference with the Onyx Cinder playset there to the fuselage of this. And I had built it and I thought, this looks right, it feels right. However, when I went away and thought about sort of like just how bulky this section is going to be on here, I thought, no, it's not long enough. I just wasn't trusting the measurements and the calculations I had on my bit of paper. So I went back, inserted another section into here, and it now looks a lot better. There are going to obviously be a few more studs added onto the front and onto the back, so it's going to be even longer than it's shown at the moment. But the most important thing is that the mechanics, where the engines rotate, that is in the correct place, and I think we have got that all good now. So at the back here, you've got the cogs here, so there's a lever at the back there, so we'll disguise that somehow further down the line. Then the axle just goes all the way down the centre, and I'm just hoping this has got enough strength to rotate all of the engines. I can't think of another technique to use, so if this doesn't work, it's just a case of manually turning the engines. But here we have the cogs, so when this rotates, this one will rotate one way, and then that will rotate the opposite way, which we don't want. So that's why we've got these 3 here, so that then corrects it. So this one's now rotating the same as that one. Now that we've got the fuselage all sorted out, we can start looking at other aspects of the build. I'm thinking the landing gear is something I need to start planning into here, as once I've plated it off, it's going to be a lot harder for me to get into parts of it. It would have been nice to have had retractable landing gear, but being realistic, this is going to be way too heavy for retractable landing gear. There's no mechanic that's going to work on there that's going to be sturdy enough, and I don't want it to be on display and then all of a sudden something gives way and it falls on the floor. So it is going to have built-in landing gear, and again, this is something that I think is making me edge more towards just making a one-style version of this, as opposed to the version where it sheds its skin. The landing gear is totally different. On here, as you can see, you've got a detailed landing gear, whereas on the version where it's all sleek, it's more of a smooth leg. So I just don't know whether or not, again, is this something that is doable. I will have another look at it, but yeah, I'm thinking let's just build that version just there. Now, I am on holiday. I've got a couple of days I'm away at the end of April and away for the first 2 weeks of May, so there won't be any Onyx Cinder update in May, unfortunately. So we'll be back on the 14th of June. But what I am going to be doing now is I am going to try and get the instructions done for this part so far. Because of the technique on here, I think I can get it all done just by looking at this, and that'd be really cool, because it'll be really nice not to have to dismantle this after I finish building it, just to then try and create some instructions. So yeah, fingers crossed we'll be able to get that done. But yeah, here it is, 150 studs in length so far, or just over. So it is going to be a beast of a ship. Anyway, that's all we have time for. I hope you've enjoyed this update. If you have, please remember to give us a big thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future content on the channel. The algorithms on YouTube, they sometimes don't recommend a video, so we do rely on that, the subscriptions and notification bells being hit so you don't miss out on our content. Anyway, thanks for popping on by. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.